Hey, folks, we're back and we're talking about the latest Gartner forecast on IT spending, which suggests that it's going to be a little bit north of 7%. And everybody's doing a little happy dance. A lot of that seems to be driven by AI and data centers. Yet, buried in there is, gee, the previous forecast was at 9%. So we lost 2%. So, Mitch, what's your take on what's going on here with spending? Is it all just AI and data centers? And damn the economic news because people are just going to invest in these emerging technologies no matter what.
Well, forecasts are forecasts. They're always made to be revised, right? Conditions change. It's just the way it is. Whether it's Gartner's or anybody else, we do our own future forecasts. And, I handle the software sector primarily around software development and cloud native things like that. And, our estimates are around 8.5% growth, CAGR of 10%, close to 10%. So it's in the same ballpark. I think the question is about the trend that you're bringing up are we seeing a downward or are we seeing a shift in spending? Are we seeing a lot more money going into data centers? I would argue that's true than what we were before because of AI. We're also seeing more money going into software, both AI software that has AI in it, and building AI into either the software we create or the products we create. So there's that rapid innovation of AI, I think, is actually fueling not obviously the chip market and also the data center market, but it's fueling a lot of development. There's so much innovation happening because of AI. You can't back off on spending totally. And it's not the dark years of 2008 or something where everything just clawed back and where we are. I think we're going to see pretty aggressive growth still.
Yeah. Look, I think you're going to see the fact of the matter is, with the taco cha-cha on tariffs, we haven't actually seen it bite yet, but it's going to bite and it will cause inflation. But let's be clear, to call it 7% is, in my world, when it's over 7.5, it's closer to 8 than 7. This is 7.9%, guys. So let's call it what it is, 8%. 8% to 9%, it's kind of flat, right? It's a percent down. It's not the end of the world. I think it's more a question, this is like measuring cholesterol. What's the good cholesterol to the bad cholesterol? Not saying spending on AI and data centers is bad cholesterol, but when it takes up an inordinate amount of that spend increase, it doesn't bode well for the rest of the sector of IT spending. And that's really the issue here, right? What's the mix?
And I agree with what you're saying, and I also think, as we have spoken before on this show, is the idea that, for me, I personally think that at the end of the day, of course, the energy in these data centers are, there's an issue there. But I also think that with innovation, things are going to become more efficient. And so these huge data centers and everything else that we're doing in this area, I think we're projecting a lot more than at the end of the day than what we're actually going to need. And there'll be more of an equaling out, a leveling. I like that better, with software. And yeah.
Kate, I think you're spot on. I'm working with both a network data networking company for data centers and also one for servers, compute, and storage. And that is the message. It's around efficiency. It's around not running just mission critical workloads. It's handling everything because things change and they can redistribute, applications or virtualized systems or whatever it might be, network paths, all of these things have become much more flexible and dynamic to be able to handle whatever we need, as opposed to here's just a special purpose that's really good at running high volume transactions for this kind of a banking application. Well, you need those maybe in an edge case, as opposed to everything's kind of got its own platform. And I think that you're right. It's going to much more efficiency, including power and water, et cetera.
Well, we had a great conversation in this, last week before, and about this, right? And I don't, to be clear, I haven't been looking at the numbers. I have no specific idea why, the numbers are where they are. But this, if I was going to think about it, I would expect that everything we're talking about is true, and that people are over focusing on the use cases we see right behind us, where a lot of us who think about where we are and where we're going are saying this is really out of kilter. And Mitch, what you just said, it's like as you look at actual workloads, what needs to run on their GPU? What are we currently running on GPUs? Are we forecasting that we're going to keep using that? And I'm telling you, we're not. What does that imply towards the arms and everything else? So, but whatever the details we're saying, I wouldn't expect huge growth on conditions right now, or reductions. But who I'm sure it's fascinating for the financial geeks out there. Exactly who's spending on what probably tells a lot of the story that we were talking about last week.
So, Alan, let's get down to the heart of this thing then. Are we living in some sort of AI bubble, and when is it going to pop?
Absolutely, without a doubt. Irrational exuberance. But that being said, let me give you another take on this. I remember back to the Great Recession in 2008, right? 2008, 2009. The fact of the matter is, though it was extremely painful for so many of our friends and family in the world, in the US and in the world, the IT sector was not as badly hit. In fact, spending probably never stopped in the IT sector, right? Mitch, you and I were working together then, right?
It shifted around, but it stayed about.
It shifted around, but it stayed. And I think it's going to be, I mentioned inflation before. I do think inflation is coming up. I do think interest rates are not going to go down if inflation goes up. It's going to hurt the housing market. As the housing market goes, the broader economy goes. We are going to have some economic pain. However, I do think that things like AI, which will boost productivity, output, efficiency, will suck up dollars, will soak up dollars as people look to get more bang for their buck. And so IT spending may not be hit as hard as the broader economy will if the economy goes south.
Well, Alan, one person's cloud boom cycle is another person's 3D TV boom cycles, right? You don't want to be the 3D TV manufacturer. Everything has its overhyped, phase, and then kind of get through the trough of disillusionment. And I think what's interesting about AI is it's the constant amount of innovation and the kind of cycle time of that happening. We haven't seen that slowing down yet. And I think it's everything because of the amount of investment that's going in. And you could also claim that China and DeepSeek, I've heard reports of they're looking to replicate everything that OpenAI does to try to disrupt the market. It is truly a race like we haven't seen before. Will the gas kind of run out and we're going to hit a certain RPM and that's max?
At some point though, it's put up or shut up, Mitch. Right? You at some point you got to say, where is it really saving us dollars? Right? We saw Microsoft had a report. I think Microsoft's trying to claim that AI saved them $500 million already, and that's why it's okay, I guess, to cut 20,000 jobs.
The devil's in the details on those things. Right?
Yeah, we don't necessarily believe that wasn't as a result of overhiring in the first place, though, because you go talk to other mid-level companies and execs, and they're saying, we're not seeing that level of productivity gain from AI.
No, but the mega guy, the hyper guys are the Salesforces, the Microsofts, the Googles, right? And is it a tech bro billionaire game? Chris, you had your hand up.
Yeah, it's funny, as a narrative integrity person, I have to say that, to be clear, I'm a CEO of an AI company using AI for these purposes, which is embedding a plug for my company, QuietWire. But it's funny. You go back to the last segment, and to the point, if the CEO has 80% of their time freed up and does nothing with it, yes, you're getting replaced by an AI. But my experience, and just in the last 60 days, the experience of a huge, Alan, I haven't had a chance to catch up with you. Talk to Gotti Everett and the GTFO prompt challenge he runs every Thursday now. A laundry list of the best people standing there with AI saying, all right, for the last 2 months, me and my team have been doing this, and we thought we would take 7 years to do this, but we're already done. And we're trying to figure out what we do with. So the acceleration as applied. And you know what I think about the state of the usage and the vendors of AI to date is inefficient is to be extremely kind. But I see right now, this year, this quarter, fascinating people in our community all around the world saying, wait, I can get this all done this fast. And I love vibe coding. It's the general theme of it. But look, when I vibe code, I'm sketching out architectures. There's real coding, which people do really well. This allows us to do the development phase of things so quickly. And that implies, too, to your point, Alan, economic impacts. I am very bullish on this. In this environment, does it enough to compensate for all the downsides? You know better than I, but this is a lifting economic force over the next couple of years.
And personally, I really believe, I talk a lot about Industry 5.0, and it's about augmentation of humans, human-machine teaming. And I think the more that we embrace this teaming concept, the more you can expect from humans.
We'll see.
You might, going back to our first block, ask a question that says, geez, if X company, laid off so many people because of AI, maybe their CEO needs to be looked at a little more closely about how efficiently that company was operating in the first place. Just saying.
Let me draw a contrast. The people that you hear saying they're experiencing high levels of productivity because of AI, especially in software development, are tech companies. You don't hear GE saying we're experiencing 80% of our code being generated by, or you don't hear Bank of America talking about it. And not that they aren't also, but there's multiple reasons for this. One is the tech companies are the ones that are investing in this. They're also the ones that have the most to gain by the products and services that they sell. So they're also applying it internally, and their messaging is always going to be built around, here's the benefits we've experienced using our own technology. You should be able to do that too. It's a pattern we see all the time, right? Switch to our database, switch to our whatever, because here's the productivity gains you can see. And initially, if you can't point to other customers, you point to yourself. And that's the phase we're in. What matters is when we see other companies starting to pronounce real numbers that affect the bottom line. When you see the GEs or the Bank of America or whoever, not the tech companies.
And the technology is just laying around right now. And Kate, you know it, right? It's a teammate thing. And we discussed enough about this, and frankly, we get tired of it. But the AI and languages, whatever, is a teammate. Look, I have had business relationships and working relationships with humans. I'm assuming I've never met or heard or seen their voice. Nothing but text. Could be a basket of squirrels. Who cares? Build a team, run a team, and that's not what we've been doing with AI at all, except for tiny use cases. Every story is, this big company using AI. What they're talking about is they have some little model and they're prompting things at it. They're not integrating them as teammates. And that's where this is going. And if you do, holy cow.
Well, it could be that the whole tech world is in an AI bubble induced by our tech bro billionaires. We'll come back here on Tech Strong Gang. Let's switch it to security. That AI application, Microsoft SharePoint, recently had a little security mess. We'll talk about that. You're watching Tech Strong Gang.